All right, welcome back, guys. Today we have Sam Ronan, who's a candidate for the DNC Chair. You guys probably know who he is. If you don't, again, he is running for DNC Chair. So I decided to have him on again to have a discussion about his policy positions in order so that you guys can learn more about his policy positions. And I have him here today. Would you like to introduce yourself, Sam?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on here again, Sahil. So my name's Samuel Ronan. I'm running for DNC chair, and many of you may have probably already looked at my name in Google or Bing and came up with the number one top search result, Ballotpedia. And unfortunately, Ballotpedia does not serve me any justice. I would like to put a little asterisk beside the Ballotpedia.
hmm
When I was running for state representative, I was running in Warren County, Ohio. So when they wrote my page, they wrote it with a conservative bias. So when you see things like strong supporter of and then Second Amendment, religion, etc., it automatically gives a negative connotation. Hopefully today I can put those fears to bed and assuage those concerns because I'm in it for you guys and I want to prove that.
All right, so to just quickly start out, we're just going to kind of get into the issues here. First of all, I'd like to know what your position is on the minimum wage. Do you think it should be raised? How do you think it should be raised? And what do you think it should be raised to? And any nuance you'd like to add to that?
Sure. So to directly answer the question about minimum wage, I think it does need to be raised on principle. To what that comes to be the argument. If we really want to look at the numbers, according to most data sources, we should be making anywhere between 20 and 26.50 an hour based on the increase in productivity and profits from businesses.
Right.
So I would happily say something like that. But the other argument is, okay, well, fine, we raise wages and then we just raise prices. Well, what I forget which candidate suggested this, but profit sharing in businesses and enforcing that would also help balance it out at the top end. And I got accused for saying blanket tax rates, and I'll probably get hit hard for saying this too, but the reason behind it is it's math, it's numbers, right? You can play with numbers. So the idea is if you raise wages, you can either mitigate the cost of increased goods by adding wage caps, so salary caps, or implementing the profit sharing. That way, you are actually a part of the pie. You actually have a vested interest in how much the company makes. So to that end, between 15 and that $26 an hour, I think would be right. But to just raise wages wouldn't solve the problem.
So, do you think that it should be tied to states and depending on what the living wage is? Should it be specifically a living wage? And should that differ in between states, or should it just be kind of a blanket number for based by the Fed?
Now, with that, I think taxation, and again, I know I've been ridiculed by this, I think taxation should be a blanket number simply because if you look at it again from pure math, say you make minimum wage right now, which is about $18,000 a year, you're already paying 15% in taxes. You get to deduct 6 grand as a personal deduction, and then you end up not having to pay taxes due to whatever math the IRS came up with, which is all well and good. But once you go higher and higher into the tax bracket, you're paying 28%, 32%, 35% of your pages off the top, on top of state and on top of local, whereas we end up paying close to 30 to 40 to 50% of our earned income in taxes. So the less of the taxes government takes right off the rip, the more we can put back into the economy, which will spur growth and spur spending. Now, I know that sounds conservative, but if you think about it, it's the most progressive thing possible because you are spending your own money and you're not just giving it away to the government to do with as they please. So to your point, should it be blanket across the country? $15 would probably be a standard minimum, and that should be the blanket across the country. And then yes, each state and city according to its cost of living, like LA, $15 an hour ain't going to do squat. New York City, that ain't going to do squat. But Springboro, Ohio, oh my God, you'll be living like a king with $15 an hour. BFE, Alabama, $15 an hour, you can get some nice stuff. And then everywhere else in between, $15 an hour might get you, a one-bedroom apartment and put the lights on. So It would have to be both. There is no one answer to this, and unfortunately, it's a discussion. It has to come from what makes the most sense for the region involved.
So do you think so? Your position on taxation is that it should be there should be a flat tax. Is what I'm getting at this. Is that what you're advocating for?
I'm saying with the flat tax, and again, I was ridiculed by this, so I want to be clear. I understand that I might be turning some people away. I'm saying mathematically, the entire country pays approximately 13% of taxes. So with when you add up all the taxes and from all the revenue and income and whatever, it amounts to approximately 13%. Whereas people are paying their full 28, 25, 30 something percent, and the wealthiest members aren't. I'm saying a flat tax brings them back in, makes our burden less. And it's just one suggestion. I'm not saying it is the selection. I'm saying I understand it. The progressive tax rate that Bernie proposes does a lot of the same thing, but it puts a greater burden on the wealthy, which only is going to encourage them to find more loopholes. If you are going to do a progressive tax rate on that gets progressively steeper with the higher income you have to get rid of loopholes. Otherwise, it's still going to inadvertently affect the low income earners, and that's what I don't want to have happen. That's why I say blanket. At least then everybody's paying the same thing, and there's no questions about it.
So, what it seems like you're kind of implying is that a flat tax would kind of make it so that the wealthiest who use the tax loopholes would just somehow stop. Is there maybe a
There would
continuation or something like that? I mean, because
right
clearly
there
they're
they
not doing it right now.
Right. There wouldn't be any loopholes to take advantage of because the tax is the tax. That's the whole point. And that's the same thing. If we do a progressive tax, and I'm all for it, I'm not against progressive tax. I'm saying there are too many tax loopholes already in place. So if we change the way taxes work, but we don't get rid of the loopholes, we're in the same boat. Flat tax, progressive tax rate, getting rid of taxes, making it even higher. If we don't get rid of the loopholes that only the wealthiest can take advantage of, we're only shooting ourselves in the foot. That is my argument. I guess, yeah. How about this? Let me just clarify. I don't like loopholes. I don't care how we tax ourselves. I don't care how we pay for bridges and schools and research, so long as everybody's paying their fair share. That is my official stance on taxes.
So, what would your ideal position be in a tax bracket? So, like, would you? Because I think Bernie's was like 42 is the top percentage,
Right.
and then there was obviously the graduated bracket. But what would your ideal tax system be in America?
Again, I would go with flat. 15% at the federal level, 10% at the state level, 5% at the local level, which amounts to what, 30% total income in taxes, which is generally a savings of upwards of 20 to 30% for most people. That's money that you can spend, that you can save, that you can invest, that you can do whatever the hell it is you want to do with your 30% that you've saved off the top. And it would take a mature society to I think, accomplish that. So that's why I say ideally. Realistically, I think that whole progressive thing, the graduated tax bracket, might make the most sense. Back in, was it Eisenhower era, the wealthiest 1% were taxed at 94%. I mean, somewhere in between that 42 and the 94 is where we probably should be for the wealthiest members of society.
Yeah, I think that was a marginal tax rate where after a certain point, that then you start paying 94% on whatever money you make after that.
Right.
But I have a quick question as well. Like, so, will like what? How I just for a flat tax, right? So you say 15, 10, 5. At the
Yeah.
federal level, they'll be getting 15, right? So.
Mhm.
With the current bracket at what, like 42 or not 42, it's 38 right
39.
now. Yeah, 39. So with that ginormous drop from 39 to 15 and our huge spending at the federal level, how will it keep up when they make the situation worse, or like, I mean, just
Right.
what's gonna happen there?
So how do I justify it, right? When it's already as high as it is and we're already in a deficit?
Hmm.
What we're not talking about with that discussion is that the wealthiest members aren't paying their full 39%. That's why we're in the hole that we're in. If you go to my website, the www.ronanfordnc.org, I go into one of the Excels on the far right of the page. It says all things political. and we go to economic waste. That is where we are losing all of our money. $500 billion in tax revenue that we're losing because of offshore bank accounts. Another $500 billion in just taxes not being filed correctly and addressed correctly. And then we're talking about $1.5 trillion in annual corporate subsidies. That is where our money is going. That's where our tax dollars are going. That's why they're not paying it. So again, the blanket tax rate and even the 39% rate, the 39% isn't really being paid because of those loopholes. No discussion about taxes has any merit if there's loopholes involved. So whatever discussion, whatever tax system we discuss and come up with, it has to get rid of the loopholes. And that is, I think, the most important point of what I was trying to get at with the 15, 10, and 5.
Okay, so your point with that is that with the 15, 10, and 5, they will absolutely hardcore be forced to pay those.
Absolutely. Like, there is no questions asked. Like, you are paying your tax dollars. I don't care who you are. You get your personal deduction, which amounts to most people that make, I believe it was $22 an hour or less. That would equate to them not having to pay effective taxes, that they would get their money back as it were. And then everybody else would, it would just be less.
So, with the huge drop that would be from 39 to 15, do you find it at all worrisome or maybe contributing more to the current massive wealth inequality we have? Because obviously the people making huge amounts of money would be benefiting way more than the people who are middle class or maybe barely making middle class and things like that. I mean, is there kind of
See,
no disparity or
that's the
anything?
perception. And I'm glad you're doing this. I'm glad you're putting me on the spot and making me look like a fool here, because that's exactly what you should be
No,
doing.
I'm not trying to do that.
The wealthiest 1% in our country are not paying 39%. That
No
is the
doubt.
problem. They're paying single digit percent. In fact, I can't remember the article. I wish I could quote it off the top of my head, but most people are paying less than a bus driver. So these billionaires, these millionaires are paying less in taxes than bus drivers percentage wise. 9%, 7%, 6%, no percent, especially when we're talking about businesses. We pay the oil industry billions of dollars for the pleasure of doing business in America. They don't pay taxes. We pay them out of our tax dollars. So what I'm getting at is 15% would be a general increase of the wealthiest 1% and their actual effective taxes. So it's really, I get it. We're starting at 39%, now we're dropping to 15, but the reality is it's more like we're taking 6% and raising it to 15%. Most wealthy people would be doubling their tax payments, which would greatly improve tax revenues. Now, when we're talking about wealth inequality, who's going to be affected more by a higher tax rate? The wealthy or the poor? If we're paying more of our paycheck in tax dollars, 30%, 40% in taxes, that's less money that we can spend on rent, on car insurance, on electricity, on food, on clothes, on anything else, savings, investments. If we can't spend our own money because it's going to government or to health insurance costs, because those are through the roof, and they're going to be even worse if the Affordable Care Act gets repealed. If we don't put a handle on that, if we don't give people more money to spend and to have out up front, that is where the income inequality comes from. The wealthy are no matter how we play this, the taxes, they're going to find a way to get theirs because they're wealthy and that's what they do. I am saying the accountability, which is the theme of my campaign, the accountability would be there. We would be able to hold them responsible for that 15%. I don't care if we do a graduated tax rate, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, so long as there aren't loopholes. That's my whole argument.
So, would you be more in favor of a graduated tax bracket or percentage rates that there are no loopholes whatsoever, instead of a flat tax that also has no loopholes whatsoever? Which one would you prefer or favor
Now,
more?
thank you. See, that's a question I can answer without looking horrible. I would definitely prefer the graduated tax rate without any loopholes, because the principle behind it is the wealthiest members of society should also be giving back more to society because we have empowered them more in society. I mean, the only reason why they're billionaires and millionaires is because you and I go to work every day. If we didn't go to work every day, they wouldn't be millionaires and billionaires. The least they can do is chip back in to help the roads, the schools, the hospitals, and research and development stuff. So,
So your position is, just to make it clear, that you are absolutely anti-tax loophole, but you are okay
yes.
with the graduated system that we currently have.
Yes.
Okay. So what are your thoughts on investing in infrastructure and getting
Oh,
more jobs and things like that? Something like Bernie Sanders had proposed into, like instead of putting money into the Iraq War and wars overseas and things like that. Like, how would you feel with a huge infrastructure investment?
I think that would be exactly where we need to be. And I don't know why this ever fell off the radar, but solar roadways, why aren't we talking about that? I mean, we have millions upon millions of square miles worth of concrete and roadways. We're talking about solar, right? Well, you'd have to build solar plants somewhere in the middle of wherever to generate the power, whereas we could line every single street in America with solar panels, which would generate electricity, which would generate, the opportunity to put fiber optic cable networks. I mean, the 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 solar roadways potential. I don't know if anybody's watched that or has talked about it lately, but you go to their website. I mean, the things that can do. Never mind having to worry about energy costs. We would be there. In fact, we'd have to be more worried about being able to store the excess than anything else. Now, we're talking about infrastructure. Whatever happened to bullet trains and maglev rails? Why aren't we talking about improving mass transit? Why aren't we talking about creating central hubs, so distribution hubs where like every 500 miles, there's this just massive warehouse that deals with distribution of goods and resources. And to us, maybe smaller hubs where trucks can start delivering. If we can consolidate our just network of commerce and just personal travel, our country would just catapult even further into the future than we already are. So infrastructure is not only the future, it should be the top investment. We should be spending more in infrastructure than we are in the military and NASA and all these other things combined.
Okay, and on the topic of jobs, what is your opinion on the current state of outsourcing of jobs, and should there be what should happen to corporations that do outsource their jobs? Like, for example, I think it was Carrier that was outsourcing their jobs to Mexico. Do you think that they should get a huge tariff on their goods at the import in order uh, to discourage them from doing that, from outsourcing jobs? Because obviously power plants don't have jobs and things like that, and we lose those jobs. What is your position on that?
So I am not as familiar with the ins and outs of how to keep jobs in America. I would say if an exit tax or increasing tariffs on imports would be the way to go about doing that, I'd support it. I would have to, speak with the experts on that, but I am absolutely against the outsourcing. I mean, I think it's dumb. I don't think it serves the purpose, especially since you take a McDonald's or Burger King in Europe where the minimum wage is significantly higher. I think the typical comparison is made with Australia and their $16 minimum wage. A Big Mac is less in Australia with a much higher minimum wage than it is here in America. The problem isn't that raising wages cuts into profits. It's that we can get away with it here in America by doing that, and that isn't right. We need to legislate that out of reality. And the same thing with the loopholes. We need to get rid of the loopholes so that we can hold them accountable. We need to hold businesses accountable to their workers and their employees. So if that would be the way to bring them back, if that would be the way to prevent them from going away, I'd absolutely support it.
Okay, and on the so we were kind of touched up on the Middle East, kind of the Middle East. Now, what is as a you are a veteran, right?
Right.
So with that in mind, what is your position on the military currently and the all the different countries that they're in, and a little more specifically afterwards is the drone strikes and things like that, and just the nature of how the definition of war has really changed. I mean, what is your position on how foreign policy should be within the Middle East?
So that's a very easy question for me to answer. Being military and having volunteered for deployments, not having gotten them, I'm not going to claim I went over there. but I know many people who have, and the consensus is we're not doing anything worthwhile over there. We're just over there to be over there to take their oil, to take the resources, to do whatever it is we're doing. We're not fighting for a cause. So absolutely, we should not be in the Middle East. We shouldn't be anywhere in the world where we're not needed and we're not doing the right thing. If we're going to risk our lives, especially as a veteran, especially as a reservist who can be called up, then I want my sacrifice to mean something. I want it to benefit the people back home. So when I say we shouldn't be in the Middle East, some people are going to accuse me of being isolationist and weak against terrorism. But at the same time,
Not that many people.
well, I'm glad
Watching
because
this anyways.
I'm glad then because that's simply not true. You can't fight extremism because that's what it is. It's not Islamic extremism as much as Trump wants to tout that. The ISIS is to the Islamic faith as the KKK is to the Christianity. There is no comparison. They are not. They are simply extremists and they're radicals. But that's an idea. That is a mindset. That is a way of a life. You can't kill that with guns. You can't kill that with drones and bombs. You have to kill that with ideas, with a counterculture. So our presence over there, boots on the ground, is useless. Drone strikes are useless. Sure, fine, we kill one of their leaders, but we kill one and then 5 more pop up. It's like the Hydra. We can't fight that war the way we have been. It's not a conventional war. Now, specific to the drone strikes, I think I just alluded to that. No, there's no purpose for it. I get the purpose of having a drone strike. It saves lives. It means we're not putting our boys and girls in uniform in danger. But if we're just willy-nilly shooting somebody up in a market and having civilian casualties, then we haven't done the job.
So do you think that drone strikes as a strategy of war rather than more superbly checked situations where instead of sending special ops and you use a drone, but instead that being as the war strategy, do you think that that's counterproductive or counterintuitive as to the plan of stopping terrorism and extremism?
Yes, because here's the thing. When we become more mechanized and more automated as a military, and warfare becomes less of me going after you and killing you with a gun and I see you and we're actually engaging in combat in a life or death struggle, once we get away from that and I'm just blowing you up from miles away or from a joystick, it desensitizes people from the act of war, which is carnage, which is violence, which is brutality, which is arguably evil. You're taking someone's life because you believe something strongly enough to take their life away. It's justified murder. At the same time, there are occasions where it is necessary to fight. When we were attacked in 9/11, that was a time to retaliate. World War II, the rise of Nazism and dictatorships in Europe and Russia, that was absolutely a time to mobilize and fight back because that would have produced darkness and evil that we could not have abided by. But that is not a way to fight Islamic, or not Islamic, but ISIS. It's not a way to fight terrorists. It's not a way to fight extremism at all. Because you're just giving fuel to the fire. You're just empowering them to say, look, see, we're right. They're just bombing us and they don't care. Right. We need to do a counterculture. We need to show that they are truly evil, that they're truly attacking. They are attacking more Muslims than they are anything else. That's what we need to be focusing. That's how we give them the power to fight back. And what we should be doing is empowering the people in Syria, in the Middle East, to fight back, to stand up against them. To, all these, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, 20 million Muslims stood in a vigil against ISIS. That is how you defeat terrorism.
Okay, so on the topic of army and weapons and stuff, you have an interesting perspective on gun control as opposed to other liberals or Democrats, whatever you want to say. What is that position? Because we kind of touched on it a little bit, but I didn't get into it too much.
Yeah. Now, being military, I will have a different perspective on gun control because we deal with weapons up to and including weapons of mass destruction, and yet we're still safe, we're still good, we're still under control because we're held to a higher standard. It's that accountability. I'm more concerned with people respecting firearms and treating them with the care that they deserve because it is a deadly weapon. No matter if you're using it for self-defense or not, it has the power to kill. So you must be aware of that, and you must treat it with that respect that it deserves. That's why use of force training should be the most prominent aspect of being able to own a weapon and operating a weapon. There's no use of force training if you're getting concealed carry licenses. There's none. All you have to do is pay your money and go through a class, and they let you go to target practice, and you get to shoot. That is literally what it takes to get a concealed carry, and now you can carry a firearm under your jacket and go wherever you want. And in the case of Ohio, you can bring a weapon anywhere in the state of Ohio except for government places of business. Now, aside from the hypocrisy, if you can concealed carry to a daycare center, what if that little toddler comes up, runs to you, you forgot to put your weapon on safety, it's fully loaded, he jumps on your hip and shoots himself or shoots you or kills himself? That is irresponsible gun ownership. It didn't matter that he had a handgun. It didn't matter that he had a 22. It didn't matter that it was only 8 rounds. It didn't matter that it was under his jacket and the whatever, and he had his concealed carry. The fact of the matter is he wasn't responsible. He had it off safety, and he got somebody hurt or killed.
Okay, so your position is that you are definitely for more regulations as to owning guns. Are you for extensive background checks and increased background checks?
And that has to be the case. You can't just walk into a gun store and walk out with an AK-47 in 5 minutes, or at least if you don't pass the background check. I mean, I have a secret clearance, so I mean, I guess it's easier for me to get by. But for most other people, they don't have that case. They don't have that. So it should take a few more days before you get an assault weapon or something that has the capability of putting 60 rounds a second or a minute downrange. But again, that's that responsibility. That comprehensive background check may not be a catch-all, and it may not be the perfect solution, but it is damn well a step in the right direction.
And okay, so a lot of people like to differentiate between handguns and assault rifles, whatever the difference may be. You know, people like to argue what the real difference is and all that. But what is your position on that? Because a lot of Democrats and liberals are for a complete assault rifle ban, meaning that you can't go around with an AR-16 or like an M16 or an AK-47 because it's just not, like, it's ridiculously uncivil in such a densely populated area and things like that. What is your position on that?
So with the rifles, for instance, you can take an AR-15 and use it for hunting. You can. They're the most versatile weapon on the market for civilians. I think what people fail to realize is that anything that has rifling in it and anything with a magazine that can put 20 or 30 rounds in it is considered an assault weapon, and it's just some look more militaristic than others. The Remington brand of rifles, they look like your old-timey rifles. You're just your regular hunting rifles, you know. Come on, Junior, let's go and catch us some dinner. But they do the same exact thing as the AR-15. It's just the AR-15 looks very closely to an M4, to an M16, something that I would have to carry in the Middle East or wherever else I would be called to service. With that being said, I personally have nothing against assault weapons. I have nothing against handguns. I think what a lot of countries in Europe do is you have to have a special permit to have them, and it has to be specifically for sporting. And that might be too extreme for some, and that might not be extreme enough for others, but I think it's a fair middle ground. You can still get your assault weapon, but you have to go to the range if you ever want to hold it and use it. Now, let's look at the Second Amendment and its verbiage specifically. The right to bear arms to protect and defend against, a well-regulated militia. The intent is if the government ever became corrupt, you would be able to pick up arms and fight against it. Well, that was back in the day where we still had, the gunpowder, and you stopped it, and every 60 seconds or so you could fire a weapon. Right. Well, now we have assault weapons. Now we have tanks. Now we have RPGs. The layman, no matter how many of us have guns, are not going to be able to step up against the Army, the Air Force, and the full power of the Navy. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't seem to realize that. A lot of people who would consider themselves constitutionalists would be... would kind of disregard that and just be like, no, we need assault rifles and things, not realizing that realistically that won't do that. But so I have a quick question for you about that, though. So you say you don't really have a problem with assault rifles, and so when you say that people should be able to have it for sporting. You said that they have to go to the range to shoot it. Does that mean that they can only hold the gun while they're at the range, or do they own it and obtain it throughout anywhere that they are?
Okay, so I think what I'm understanding is should assault rifles, if the whole purpose is meant to be for sporting, should they only be accessible at the range where they can be utilized, or should they be available with all the other weapons?
Yeah.
So again, it comes back to how would you regulate that? If you own the sporting rifle, okay, let's just go back a step. If you enter a military installation and you carry, whether you have a concealed carry or not, whether you're active duty or not, whether you're military or not, you have to go to the armory and drop off your weapon. So that is an extreme, but it's a safe extreme. But it also means only law enforcement or security forces or military police have weapons on them. And the constitutionalists, like you said, would be like, well, no, now you're taking away my guns. Well, for liberals and Democrats, I think what we fail to realize sometimes is that not everyone with a gun is a bad person, and some people really do just want a gun to go to the range and get their rocks off. So the extreme version of that is you can only acquire, purchase, and leave your weapons at the range, and that there would be some sort of armory process, a check-in, check-out type situation, and the only way you could buy them is from there. That's what is being done with cannabis in Colorado and Arizona. The only way you can get marijuana is through the dispensary, but of course, since it's medicinal, you can use it wherever you want. Well, with the assault rifles, we would have to probably take it to that next step where you can buy it, you can use it, but you have to leave it there, just to take away the risk of it. Handguns, shotguns, the other types of firearms, those could be considered taking home, or the allowance of being able to take home. I think that could be a fair middle ground in the discussion at the very least, but we have to understand that most people who have guns truly just keep it in a lockbox and keep it in their closet, or just go to the range on the weekend to get their rocks off. The people who are taking their AR-15s and going to Subway, that's fear-mongering, and I don't agree with that.
Right. There is fear-mongering, but there will be things like the Sandy Hook massacre where many kids were killed. So at what point do these occurrences that happen with police dying, I think from snipers, and just different things like that, at what point does that change your opinion and say, okay, these casualties are not worth this supposed, necessary necessary freedom to hold this gun wherever you are and love it and treat it like it's your wife or something.
This is my rifle.
When does that exactly? So at what point do you go, okay, this needs to stop because it's outbreaking? At what point do those few people, as they may be, which is true, it's a minority, but however, at what point does that minority, which causes massacres a lot, like we've seen a lot of movie theater shootings, at what point do you see that and you go, okay, we have to set some kind of new regulation that will prevent that from happening?
So the root problem with that question is that you can't regulate people not to be murderous or snap or just go to town. Some people are mentally ill. Some people had a really bad day and they happen to have something at their disposal. And some people truly want to take someone else's life. And I think the underlying problem with that is it's culture, it's society, it's here, it's mental. And no amount of legislation, no amount of platforming, no amount of pandering, no amount of whatever is going to change that. You can take away every single gun in the world, not just America, just the whole entire world, military, the whole 9 yards, and people will still find a way to kill themselves or kill each other. For thousands of years, it was with sticks and stones. Then for hundreds of years, it was with swords and bows and arrows.
Right. No doubt. So I hear what you're saying. Right? Go ahead.
And I'm not trying to belittle it. I'm just saying at the end of the day, you can regulate guns to the umpteenth degree. You can take away the Second Amendment for all it matters. People will still kill each other. But if you take it away and you make it illegal, just like the war on drugs, if we have a war on guns, people are still going to use it. They're still going to acquire them.
No doubt.
But now it's even more of a criminal effect, so they're going to be even less likely to consider a middle ground. If you push to an extreme, others will push to the opposite extreme. And then we have that contention. That's why with this discussion specifically, and especially the economic discussion we had earlier, we can't focus so much on the extreme argument. Any loss of life, any loss of innocent life, every time I read a 4-year-old killed themselves with a gun, I want to find that person who owned the gun and strangle them. I really do, because how can you be so irresponsible to leave a loaded firearm within reach of a 4-year-old when you know it's loaded and when you know that 4-year-old is going to be curious? That person should be in prison for the rest of their life. That is how I personally feel. But I'm also aware and understanding that you can get rid of them. People will still find a way to kill each other, and you just can't get rid of hate in people's hearts. You just can't do it, and we've seen that. So for me, I think there should be a middle ground. I think whatever that middle ground is somewhere between getting rid of the Second Amendment and everybody being able to have guns. There is a middle ground, and I think making it so that if you have assault weapons, they're only at the sporting area. They're only at the place where you can shoot them. Handguns have to have a much, much higher level of accountability and a much higher stance on training. I mean, in order to get a driver's license, you have to go through a many-week process, spend some money, and you actually have to prove you can drive a car. And you can fail, and then you have to pay your money again and go through the training again. I feel personally that the well-regulated militia part of the Second Amendment definitely applies there. If you're not competent enough to own a firearm, then you don't have the right, per the Constitution, per the verbiage of the Constitution, you don't have the right to own one.
Okay, so now we're going to, because you touched on it a little bit, the war on drugs, so we'll jump into that a little bit. So when the war on drugs was started, there are more people using drugs than there were when the war on drugs was started, instead of the opposite, right? So, and although it's lower than how many there were a few years ago, it's still more than it was at the time.
Right.
So, and there's, what is it, like trillions of dollars wasted, I'm pretty sure.
Easily.
So,
yeah.
What is your opinion on the war on drugs, and how should we deal with that? What is your opinion on what marijuana legalization, and maybe for the states and at the federal level? What are your thoughts on that?
So the war on drugs is an absolute and abysmal failure, and it was from day one, because of what I was saying about with firearms. You can make it illegal, but people will still access it. But with drugs specifically, it becomes a health issue because it's an addiction, and an addiction is a psychological issue, which is just exacerbated by the drug itself.
Right.
So if you truly want to get drugs off the streets, then you have to treat the conditions, which is addiction. Now, with that being said, the only way to effectively fight it is with universal health care, and I am a full supporter of that. And that might be a question later on, but I'll just touch on it now. Universal health care is exactly what this country needs. Europe has it. Most of Western civilization has it. Why don't we? But if we were to have it, and many other countries did legalize drugs, and their drug usage just started to plummet because people got the treatment, they got off their addiction, they got over their addiction, and they weren't going to prison, which means they don't have a record, which means they can still get a good paying job, which means they can still go to school, and this, that, and the other. They become productive members of society again. They don't become reliant on this drug, this addiction. And so that's how I would handle it. And I think that should be handled at the federal level. I think it should be a judicial passage. If Citizens United can screw us over by making money equatable to speech and politics, then the judicial branch can most certainly legalize marijuana, or I don't want to say legalize all drugs in that now I'm advocating let's have heroin on the streets, but I think to make drug usage and possession in the quantities of what a person would use and consume themselves, that should not be a felony and a criminal offense. That should be treated as a health issue. Anything else, like the distribution and like selling drugs, having hundreds of kilos worth of cocaine or something, yeah, that's a criminal offense. But right. You, the user, the addict, you shouldn't be treated as a criminal. You shouldn't have a criminal record because of it. And I think we need to legalize it to that extent, or legislate it to that extent. And to the point of marijuana specifically, marijuana actually has good uses. Like so the THC in it is the drug inhibiting factor, but it's also the part that helps the glaucoma, the pain, and this, that, and the other, and it's much more effective. And then you take the cannabis oils; it has medicinal properties. Not only should we be legalizing pot recreationally, but also medicinally all across the country. We should be reinvesting in hemp. Hemp was America's number one cash crop up until it was made illegal in the 30s or the 40s. Hemp literally can be used for anything. The table that I'm sitting at, the doors in your background, hemp can make that. The paper, toilet paper, regular paper, clothing, hemp can literally be used in just about any industry in America, short of, well, I don't know, maybe electronics. I don't know you can make a circuit board with hemp. Other than that, you can make just about everything else that you use on a regular basis. Plastics, textiles, papers. So the sheer potential of revenue and industry that can be involved with the cannabis industry from the top levels down, making it legal at the federal level, that could spark an economic boom and a golden age that we haven't seen since post-World War II America.
Okay, so we touched a little bit on the universal healthcare issue, so you do support that. What is your opinion on abortion?
So abortion should not be decided based on religion, for one. So if your decision is religious and you're trying to make somebody else's choice based on that off of your religion, then that's absolutely unacceptable. I personally think abortion is a woman's choice to be made between herself and her doctor, and her, maybe ask her husband or the father, but that is as an opinion, not as a deciding and ruling factor. The fact that rapists in states in our country can actually sue if they get an abortion or sue for child visitation rights is appalling. It is absolutely abysmal. And that whoever thought that was a good idea should literally never, ever hold public office ever again. Right. So to answer your question with a one-word answer, I am pro-abortion. It should be a woman's choice.
Okay, so for our final topic we have here, what is your opinion on the environment? Now, I know it's silly that I say opinion, because obviously there are certain things that are just simply facts, like climate change, but people like
right.
to deny it in America, which they don't do in the rest of the world. But what, for the opinion aspect, what do you think policy and legislation-wise should be put in place for the environment, and how important do you think it is as stacking up to others?
So, having been one of, few people who actually stood with Standing Rock, I took the drive out there. That's 17 hours of just kumbaya, right? But what they're doing is very important. They're standing for clear water, clean water. And the fact that Donald Trump just passed a resolution that allowed coal to willy-nilly dump their waste into our drinking water, their drinking water, no less. I don't think they realize that, but
yeah.
The environment, if nothing else, if we lived in a pure utopian society, Star Trek universe where money is no longer a thing and people just live because they live and they want to do something, if we were even at that level, we would still have to take care of our environment, our water, our lands, the ozone layer. If we can't breathe the air, drink the water, and eat the food, then we're not going to live. So that it has to be our priority. And in fact, that's why I'm such a huge advocate on solar. It is literally using the giant battery 93 million miles away to power our tiny little planet that can fit 1 million times over in there. Right. So we need to do whatever we can to affect clean energy, environmental improvements. The technology's there. Hydrogen-based cars where oxygen and hydrogen as gases combine to create hydrogen, and then the heat and the combustion and the blah, 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 the science that I don't even understand makes the thing go round and put your car in motion or your machine in motion. That technology is there. Thorium, for 100 grams, will last 100 years and power a vehicle the size of a Dodge Charger. For 100 years, 100 grams. Why aren't we doing this? You never have to gas up your car again in your lifetime. The fact that the oil industry and gas industry is so entrenched in politics, I think, is the reason why we don't have those technologies. And as per what could I do as chairman, I could definitely push that issue. I would be in charge of deciding platforms. I'd be in charge of endorsing and withholding endorsement or support or not support of these candidates and these politicians that hold office. If you're not going to support humanity and survival, you don't get to call yourself a Democrat.
Okay, so really quickly, finally here, I just thought of something interesting. So you touched on this a little bit, and I didn't even notice it until today when I went back and saw a video. It was that you were in. Was it a forum where you were talking, and it was kind of the clip that got you to go viral? Was it a forum?
Yeah, I was in Houston and
Mm-hmm.
Detroit, and then I had the Young Turks interview with Nomeki in Phoenix.
Okay, so you were at the forum, and you were next to Keith Ellison and other candidates. I didn't
That was
see
Detroit.
them. Okay,
Yeah,
so what I just noticed was that they were all wearing suits, but you were just wearing a sweatshirt.
that's right.
That's very interesting, and it seemed to make you stand out. And I didn't realize it yet, and we touched up on it a little bit. So would you care to explain and kind of add on to that why you do it, and if it adds any significance to your campaign, maybe?
So in some ways, it's to stand out. I do it on purpose, but in some ways, okay, Detroit, Michigan is freaking cold. All right, let's go. Sorry, it is winter time, and Houston
Right.
wasn't exactly a balmy 80 degrees either. I had actually a polo shirt and slacks that I was going to wear at the Houston Forum, but it was too cold. I'm sorry, it was too cold. Now, the practicality aside, yes, I did want to set myself aside by not wearing a suit. I have a suit. I bought my first suit when I was 25 years old because I've never needed one beyond that.
Hmm.
But if I'm just another suit on there, but I happen to be talking about populist issues, then I either look like a sellout or like I'm not being sincere. But if I'm just a guy wearing a sweater and it happens to make sense because it's cold out there, then when I'm talking to people, I'm talking to people as a people. You know what I mean? I'm trying to be as sincere as possible. This is WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. This is me. I am Samuel Ronan. I happen to be sitting next to Keith. I happen to be talking smack to Ray Buckley, calling him old. I happen to be running for DNC chairman. I happen to care about my country, and I happen to believe in the oath I swore to my country. So why would I put on a costume? Why would I put on an air by wearing this suit to try and be something I'm not? I am not a politician. I am the exact opposite of a politician because I have an opinion and I have a spine and I don't take corporate money and I wouldn't even if they were offering it to me. The thing is, it shows that genuine article without having to pander or overdo it because I'm comfortable on stage. I would be probably less comfortable if I had to wear my vest and my nice blue shirt and the uncomfortable shoes. It's just because it also changes your mindset. Oh, now I have to be a suit. I have to be adult Ronan. Whereas I can still be an adult. I can still be a leader by setting an example, by being the example, by leading from the front. I think when you wear a suit, you automatically think, oh, I'm in charge. I'm the boss. Whatever I say goes. Or when you see that person, oh, he's not going to listen to a damn thing I say. He's somebody. I
Hmm.
don't want to give that impression. And even if I do become DNC chair, let's just say when I become DNC chair, I'm still going to wear my sweaters. You can call me Mr. Rogers. That can be my hashtag. That can be my meme. Mr. Rogers running the DNC. And you know what? When I hold senators, when I call them into my office and we have those conference rooms and I'm telling them what I think about their policies and their actions and where they can put them, it's going to be wearing this sweater right here.
Sounds good to me, man. Seems very interesting. I really appreciate you coming on again, man. It's a great
Yeah.
discussion. I hope to have you on again. Make sure you guys spread the word about Sam Ronan. He is running for DNC chair, and he cares about the issues and he cares about the people. So make sure you guys go check him out. You have a Twitter, correct? It is
At
Ronan
Ronan
for
for DNC.
okay, Ronan for DNC. So make sure you guys do follow him and spread the word. More importantly, any last words?
No, you know what? I appreciate the tough questions. You pushed me into a corner and I had to stand my ground. I like it. But that's what I liked the most. We had the conversation. If nobody gets anything else out of my candidacy and where I am and who I am as a person, I want to bring the conversation back into politics. This my way or the highway, left versus right, us versus them, we need to find the middle ground because the middle ground is the solution. Somewhere in between this and that, between black and white, will make all of us have a voice. And that's what I want to do. So you know what? You might be a one issue voter, but we got to change that. And that's what I'm trying to do
Sounds good, man. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Again, make sure you follow him on Twitter. It's Ronan for Chair
for DNC.
for DNC. So make sure you guys do follow him and spread the word. And there are some articles on him. You can go check them out. there is one by Progressive Army. So thank you so much again for coming on. I hope to see you soon.